And good morning again. So our talk title today is we continue to work with the theme and the idea of creating a world that works for all. That's our year-long theme. It's the year-long theme throughout the religious science organization, creating a world that works for all. And so our title today is What Seeks Expression Through You? What seeks expression through each of us? The vision that goes with this is that we see our organization as a global community that embraces peace, love, and compassion. And that's who we are here to be. We are here to be that. And we are here to stand in the eye of the storm. Have you noticed it's a little stormy out in the world right now? Yes? Yep. We are here to stand and be that peace, that love, that compassion in the midst of the storm. The quick and dirty answer to this question, what seeks expression through me, is that there is an infinite presence that is constantly seeking expression through us. There's that presence that is constantly seeking expression through us. This weekend with the men's retreat, we explored the journey of Odysseus, Greek mythology. And in Greek mythology, as in Hindu mythology, as in many other mythologies, the gods and the humans have a lot of interaction. And there's a call. The gods want to be involved in and working on the human level. The humans want to be working with the gods. And there's this yearning back and forth, for both aspects to participate. Today we might scientifically call that wave particle. There's a yearning for this to be one or the other and to move back and forth. There's a yearning within us, within the masculine and feminine, to work together. There's this call and this dynamic that happens back and forth, back and forth. And so it is this expression, it is this divine expression that wants to express here in the human realm. It's not something that just sits up there in the sky and is self-content with itself. It wants to interact with us, and we want to interact with it. And so we create that dance. If we're open to it, we can create that dance together. My favorite quote of that, or one of my favorite quotes of that, is Emerson's, "We are inlets, and we may become outlets to the divine." We are already inlets. We're already plugged into it, and we can let it express through us if we say yes. And so we play with this idea. But when we say that I want to have God coming through me, I'm an open vessel. Yes, Spirit, move through me. Whatever you want to express through me, go ahead. Let's do this. What does that exactly mean? What exactly does that mean? As we sit here on this human planet, what does it mean? The Dalai Lama in an interview last year said, we cannot solve this problem. He was talking about peace. He was being interviewed about terrorism in the world. And he says, we cannot solve this problem only through prayers. I am a Buddhist, and I believe in praying. But humans have created this problem, and now we are asking God to solve it. It is illogical. So let us work for peace within our families and society, and not expect help from God, Buddha, or the governments. You and I are the solution. It's not whatever political candidate is running for whatever office. You and I, by creating and being love, are the solution. And the more that we can apply that, because what we know is that God is love. So what I want to have expressing through me, when I say I'm willing to have God express through me, what is it that I'm willing to have expressed through? It's the nature of love. It's the nature of love, and it's a nature of love that is not constricted, restricted, not for some people or for some people and not others. It is this, as a friend calls it, so dysfunctional. God is so dysfunctional that it just simply loves everything. Okay? There is no holding back. There is no withhold. There's a law that creates consequences, but the love is complete, eternal, fully given all the time, always on. So if we're expressing anything that is not like love, we're not expressing God. And so that calls me to look at my life and say, where am I not feeling and expressing love? Who am I withholding love from? Where am I withholding my love? Where is it? And love, as anybody who's ever been in love is, you really get engaged with it, right? You don't just sit there and go, oh, hi. Okay? You're engaged. You're doing what you can. You're fully involved and fully engaged. Are we fully engaged with our love in the world? And that is the question I ask myself. How can I be more engaged? If we're not holding all beings in love, then we're not expressing God. God's the one life, and everyone is included in it. One life. One life. Not two. One life. We are one. The black person who's being shot and I are one. The police officer who's shooting the black person and I are one. The people who are protesting the shooting and I are one. Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton, Bernie, anybody else, and I are one. Take a breath. Maybe a deep breath, maybe a couple of deep breaths for some of us. Because sometimes that's hard to imagine. Sometimes that's hard to grasp. Now, we don't necessarily have to like what they're doing, but they are one with us. And we have to hold them in that place from the deep soul, the deep heart of holding that in love. And I know it's my challenge. I used to kind of join with some of my friends on Facebook who were poking fun at a particular political candidate. And I don't do that anymore. Because I can't sit here in authenticity and say that that person needs to be ridiculed by me and others just because I disagree with their stance and their positions. And I can simply say I disagree with the position, and the position that I really want is a position of love, and a position of unity, and a position of inclusiveness, and a position of respect, and a position of honesty and integrity. Okay? And that is the position I go for. My friend Reverend David Alexander says, I'm not political, I'm positional. I go for a position. What is the quality that I want? And ultimately, the quality that I want is not to go and say, okay, is that person doing it? Is that person doing it? Is that person doing it? But to say, am I? Okay, if that's the position that I want, am I living it? And so whenever I get upset with a candidate out here, or somebody who's doing something over here, I have to say, where does that live within me? Because if it's here, if it's showing up in our world, it exists within us, even in the most subtle level, but it exists. I read something recently on racism that talks about most of us would not be overt racists. But then it asks the question, if you treat a black person the same as a white person, do you congratulate yourself for having done that? So it's very subtle. Am I just seeing the person? Am I looking at God and seeing just that? Or am I seeing something else in between and holding myself with that? And holding myself stuck in that place? How can I move past that? How can I get to a place where I simply, from my God self to the other person's God self, am communicating directly? And it's challenging, isn't it? I find it challenging. Okay. I'm grateful that we have this place where we can talk about this, by the way. Because in some churches we couldn't. In some places we couldn't. And it's not always comfortable. I believe that we are rising in consciousness as a planet. And when we rise in consciousness with anything we do, everything unlike it, unlike that direction we're moving into, surfaces. So a friend of mine says, if I'm moving towards love, anything unlike love shows up for the purpose of healing and release. And that last part is very important. It's showing up for the purpose of healing and release. So as we look at the violence, as we look at the racism, as we look at the terrorism, as we look at all this, it's showing up so we can simply say, you know what, this doesn't belong here anymore. And we can start to release it, and we can start to first release it within ourselves. How can I start to release that within me? How can I plumb my depths? How can I do the scariest thing we can do as human beings and look at our shadow, our own shadow? We don't like to do shadow work sometimes in religious science churches, but we have to be able to look at the shadow. We have to be able to look and say, you know what? First of all, it is just that. It's a shadow. It's not an object. It's just a shadow. And a shadow does what? It responds to the movement. If I walk around, if I've got a light shining on me, somewhere there's a shadow here, the shadow doesn't control me. I control it. It just is a responsive thing. It has no substance. It has no power by itself. It is just simply a place where there's an absence of light. Can I look into my life and say, where is the absence of light in my own consciousness and start to say, I am willing to do the work to bring light into that area. I love this poem, and I loved it especially for the line that we are doing soul-sized steps. We are doing soul-sized steps. This is not a time for us to be in baby steps anymore. This is not a time to sit here and go, well, we're children of God, and the government will take care of it, and Jesus will save us, or whatever, whatever, okay? It's a time for us to simply say, it's us. You and I are the second coming. You and I are the places of peace in the world. We are the peacemakers. We are the love generators, or love transmitters. The love's already here, we just need to transmit it. We let it flow through us. And sometimes that's challenging. And it takes us out to the edge where it's not comfortable. It takes us out to our green growing edge, where it's scary, where it's challenging, where we have to sit here and go, you know what? The ways that we have been doing it don't work. We've got to create new ways. And I don't even know yet what those are. But I am willing to go there and say, I am willing to look at this, I'm willing to walk through this and find a way, find a solution. You know, I love it, my little Harry Potter metaphors. And the very first book of Harry Potter, there's a point where somebody comes running into the dining hall and says there's a troll in the dungeon, with great drama. Troll in the dungeon. The troll in the dungeon represents the dark shadow side that's underneath, that's not visible. In the dungeon is down below consciousness. And of course the students all panic, and then Dumbledore, who is the high point of consciousness, the God self, you might say, of that metaphor, brings it back to order, sends the students off to their dorm rooms and where they will be safe, and assigns the teachers to go deal with the troll. And the troll, by the way, does not respond to normal magic. It's one of those things that you have to figure out other ways to deal with it. So Harry Potter and his good friend Ron realize that their other friend Hermione is off in the girls' bathroom crying because they said something cruel to her earlier. And so they have an intention, and that intention is, we're going to keep Hermione safe. We're going to go run over there real quick and tell her that she's got to get out of the bathroom and come up there. And they arrive in the bathroom, and suddenly they realize that the troll is no longer in the dungeon. The troll is in the girls' bathroom. Okay? And that's what happens with trolls in our consciousness, isn't it? They come up from below the surface, and that's what we're seeing in our culture, in our world right now. The troll, which has always been there, is coming up. But it's coming up so we can finally deal with it. And so here are these three first-year wizarding students who don't know a whole lot yet, and they're finding way after way after way. They're throwing stuff, and they're, at one point Harry sticks his wand up the nose of the troll, and they're finding all sorts of ways, innovative ways, and they don't know what they're doing, and they don't have a clear plan for a solution, but they just keep throwing something at it until it works. But if we're not willing to look at the troll, and if we're not even willing to try, if we're not even willing to say, we need to find solutions, and I'm willing to be part of the process of creating solution here. And I know, first of all, see, we have the gift that we as religious scientists bring to this world is how we know. We know that we are one with an absolute infinite love. We are that. Okay? There's no God who ordains suffering. It's the very first paragraph, first page of the Science Mind textbook. God does not have us in bondage. God does not intend us to be in bondage. God intends us to be in freedom. Okay? And so if we can start to work from that consciousness and then realize, first of all, that we do have a consciousness and that it has an outpicturing and a result. And that we can change it. That's the good news. Whenever anybody gets involved in this teaching, the first thing is, I created that mess? Oh, God, But the good, and that's the uncomfortable part. The good news is, yeah, I did create it, and guess what? I can choose again and create something new. That's the good news. So the good news is, yeah, we got a mess. We got a mess in the planet, don't we? Guess what? It's all consciousness. The planet doesn't operate outside the laws of God, and we can and know how to change consciousness. And so can we bring that? Will we bring that not can we. Will we bring that? Will we engage ourselves with so much love for this? You know, last week I was up in Eugene at a New Thought conference, and there was a guy up there one time who, you know, we were talking about the shadow part as part of that conference, the shadow life. And the guy said, I'm glad I'm old. I don't have to deal with these problems. I'm going to be gone before the oceans rise and the planetary changes happen. And I kind of let it slide, but I wanted to just say, do you not understand the nature of life? You're an eternal being. There is no place else for you or me or anybody else to go. We're here, and our consciousness creates our here-ness and outpictures all around us. And so no matter what form you go into next, that consciousness is still going to be outpicturing the same thing for you. And it's the same for all of us. Until we face what it is in our consciousness that has created the stuff that we don't want, we are going to keep on dealing with it and dealing with it and dealing with it until, you know, it becomes either a gentle nudge or a hard push or a troll in the dungeon with a big old, you know, thing swinging it through trying to wreck our world, okay? A big old club. Until we face what we're facing now, until we turn around and face it and say, I no longer give you any power. Roy reminded me yesterday in the men's retreat of that wonderful Native American phrase that says, what wolf do we feed? Am I going to feed the wolf of terror, of fear, of separation, of believing that I'm powerless, and even though I'm one and totally interconnected with all of life, I'm powerless? When I get rid of that, when I start to step up and say, I am willing to be the full expression of the divine working through me, what wants to express through me is the spiritual power of love of the infinite presence. And when I can say yes to that and start moving my feet and doing something from that consciousness. See, when we encounter the news, first of all, we can either avoid all the news. That's one option. And sometimes if you're brand new in the spiritual path, that's actually probably a good option to unplug. We had a couple of people yesterday who were talking about their addiction to the news. And if it's an addiction to the news, it's probably good to unplug from that addiction for a while, right? But when you're through with that, when you calm down, when you've settled, when you've recognized that I am a powerful being, I'm a spiritual being, we can start to gradually step back into the news in a different consciousness, and that is the consciousness of looking and saying, where is my spiritual work? Where is my prayer? This is my prayer request list. Where am I being called to serve in this world? And if we don't do that, we sit in fight, flight, or freeze with the news. Fight is something happens and I got to go out there and get whoever it is. This is what we see when we see protesters running around burning cop cars or shooting people or whatever. That's the fight mechanism. Okay? But it's not from a consciousness point, it's just from a reactive point. And so we're playing with the world of effects. We're trying to change the movie screen instead of changing the movie. Okay? Flight, of course, is we'll just run away. I'm going to die. I don't have to deal with it anyways. You guys, that younger generation, they can deal with it. Okay? That's flight. I'm not going to deal with it. And freeze is just, I'm stuck. I'm overwhelmed. I have no idea what to do. I know something needs to be done. I feel powerless. I'm stuck, and I don't know what to do. None of those work. None of those work. And so can I sit here and start to say, I may not know right now what to do, but I am willing to go and do something. I'm willing to start from consciousness and do something. The music group, the Black Eyed Peas, have a wonderful song, and I just saw that they redid it on Facebook with a new video, and the song is called Where is the Love? And from that song kind of gives us a couple of lines here that give us a perspective for what we're dealing with as far as how we're being bombarded with information and what it's doing for us. And the lines go, wrong information always shown by the media, negative images is the main criteria. Infecting the young minds faster than bacteria. Kids want to act like what they see in the cinema. Whatever happened to the values of humanity? Whatever happened to fairness and equality? Instead of spreading love, we're spreading animosity, lack of understanding, leading us away from unity. Am I willing to start spreading love? Am I willing to start actively spreading love and the practice and experience of unity? Can I look at everyone? Can I look at the homeless person on the streets here in Reading? Can I look at the drug addict on the streets here in Reading and simply say, you know, that person and I are one. And I care enough that it's time that I don't just drive by that person and ignore, but do something to lift the consciousness of this community. Reverend Sue was pointing out to me, she saw an article on Facebook that in the Netherlands there are no stray dogs. Okay? What an interesting concept and what an interesting consciousness. There is no one left behind. There is no one left out. There is no one homeless as far as the dog population, and probably very few in the human population, because there's a consciousness that says we are one. We are brothers and sisters. Can we start to approach it from that instead of, oh, let's just shove them down to the next town down the road and get them out of the city? Because the next town down the road is still us. It's still us. So this week I invite us to do 3 things. First one is to be willing to look. To be willing to look. If you, like I sometimes am, a person who just like, I don't want to look at this, being willing to look. Being willing to face that shadow. The Harry Potter metaphor, again, is that for a long time, the bad guy in Harry Potter's novels was known as he who must not be named. And Harry Potter at one point in time says, look, he's got a name, it's Voldemort. I give it a name, I can start to face it, and then it becomes smaller than this big energy. And I love it, Dumbledore used to call Voldemort by his original name, Tom Riddle, which was his birth name before he became this Lord Voldemort. He didn't even recognize that evil side of him. He took him clear back to the innocent, original aspect of himself, and that's who he was looking at. Can we face the shadow? Can we name the shadow? And can we start to say, I'm going to do something with it? The shadow itself has no inherent power. The shadow itself has no inherent power. The homelessness we look at is a homelessness within ourselves. The addictions we look at are the addictions within ourselves. Can I look within and start to be willing to hold a space where there's a home for every aspect of myself and everyone I meet? Now, I may not know how to build housing. I may not know how to fund it. I may not know what to do, but can I be in the consciousness that says I am willing to hold that idea until it shows up? Okay? So that's our first spiritual practice. Can we look at it? And then secondly, and I kind of alluded into it, overlapped into it, be willing to bring our consciousness to life. Ernest Holmes says that God plus one is majority. If I can get in alignment, in clear alignment with the infinite presence and say, yes, I am willing to be in a place where that expresses what true nature the divine expresses, I can start to be a healing force in this world. And I am willing to be that. I may not even have a clue what that looks like. But I'm willing to go there, and I'm willing to be the place where it starts to show up. Okay? And so that's the second practice. To be willing to bring that high consciousness, this truth teaching we have to life. And then finally, the third one is to be willing to listen to what wants to express through me as solutions. So once I have that opening, once I say yes to Spirit, am I willing to actually listen? And then am I willing to take whatever comes through and move it forward? It might be to go talk to a city council person. It might be to write a letter. It might be to just simply do deep, deep prayer. You know, somebody in one of our surveys last week said that our treatments are too long. Ernest Holmes used to sit in treatment for hours. Hours. Because he knew that it took that time to shift his consciousness. And when we're in stuck consciousness, I know for me, there are times that I can just know it like that, and there are times that I have to sit there and wrestle for an hour or more with whatever it is that I'm facing, and then come back to it again, and come back to it again. And so can we do that work? Can we do that work in consciousness, where we sit there and we start to move all of the shadow, all that is unlike the beautiful, full expression of love, out of our consciousness, and let it move in. As the Dalai Lama said, it's not enough to just pray. Am I willing to be part of the solution? Am I willing to stop waiting for a government or a God or a Buddha to do it for me? So are we willing to play with that? I'm going to play with that. Would you like to play with me this week? To start to say, yes, I'm willing to be a place in the world that establishes that this pain, this suffering, this shadow side no longer exists. And I have no bloody clue what that looks like, the how to get there. But I do know what it feels like, and I'm willing to hold that feeling. Last night, I'm going to go slightly longer. Last night, we did an exercise towards the end where the men had come into their authentic self, and awareness and deep connection with their authentic self. And we had a line that was drawn, kind of a crooked line that was drawn on the carpet back there with blue tape. And all the different obstacles which each man selected were yelling and screaming at them for, you can't do it because of this, you're not good enough, you're whatever, right? And they had an advocate who was their God self reminding them, and their authentic person, the person that they truly wanted to be at the far end of it, to draw them to that. And I know it was powerful to watch each person dealing with the shadows, dealing with the stuff, the distractions, and going for the powerful man. I watched one man who went through it, and you could see he was stuck, and all of a sudden it's like he heard the voice of his authentic person on the other end, and it's just like made a beeline for it. It said, the heck with dealing with all this stuff. I am going for this, the solution. I know when I walked that path, I started into it, and I just looked down at the path, and somebody said, I'm just paying attention to this path, and I'm walking this path. I blocked out everything else that was happening. The only real distraction was somebody stuck a plate of baklava in my face as we were walking, and I kind of like food. It's one of my distractions. And even that, I kind of just gently shoved it aside. I was tempted to take one as I went, but I just shoved the whole thing aside, but stayed right on that blue path, right on the blue line, right to the end of it. Can we stay on the blue line? Can we walk that path? Can we listen to the end result? We have planted a vision of a world that works for all. Can I sit here and hold to that vision? And no, I don't know how to get there, but I know that if I start going there, I will get there. I will find a way. Harry and Ron had no idea how to beat the troll, but they found a way. Most of us have no idea to do many of the things we've done in our lives, but we find a way. And so will you join me this week in finding the way and being willing to have that idea of a world that works for all be so loud in our minds and so clear in our vision that that's what we go for and live from our hearts and live from the spiritual truth that we embody. I hope you'll join me in that. I want to close with a quote from Ernest from the Science Mind textbook. It says, it is one thing to know a principle and another to apply it. The Spirit can only do for us what it can do through us. Unless we are able to provide the consciousness, it cannot make the gift. When we understand the law, we learn to consciously embody what we wish and think of this only, and then we are drawn silently toward it. I invite you this week to have that vision of where you want to go. In your individual lives also, and also as a world community. We affect the world. Yes, we affect the world. Each of you. None of us is powerless. We are connected to the infinite power. So let us move into prayer. As I turn to that infinite power, to the infinite presence, to that pure love, and to that wisdom and divine order that knows exactly how to replicate its own nature on this planet and is desirous of doing so. That is the reason for the creation of this. It's for God to be God. And I speak my word also and know as we are aware that this infinite presence is all that there is, that because of that, I recognize that I and everyone in this room and everyone on this planet and everything on this planet and the planet itself, all the stars, all the galaxies, all of it is one of the same infinite presence. There is no separation. There is no separation. There is no place where the infinite powerful love of that one presence does not exist. There is no place. We are immersed in it, and we are expressions of it. We are incarnations of love. And so I speak my word. We open our hearts, we open our minds, we open our whole beings, and allow that spiritual truth to move through us like it has never done before. Because we are being called by this world to go places and to be greater than we have ever been before. And that each of us is willing to say yes and to move into that expression. And we don't have to know the how, and we don't have to have it all figured out. We have to be willing to be conduits for Spirit, faucets for God. open and flowing, letting that flow, knowing that the flow itself, the wisdom itself, the infinite presence itself knows what to do. We just have to be willing to be letting it be done through us. And so we create an individual and a collective consciousness that says, yes, I am willing to be a place where this light is so bright, this love is so strong, this wisdom is so clear, that it does affect this whole world, and it brings and dissolves everything up for healing and release, and dissolves it into the no-thingness that it truly is. Because the real truth of this world is pure love, pure light, pure divine energy. That is the truth of this world, and we allow it to be. And I'm grateful that we know this as the truth. We stand in that truth. We say yes to that truth. I'm grateful for the good that comes out of it, for the spirit that moves, lives, expresses through us and all around us. And so I release this word into law, knowing that it is so, right here and right now, because we have declared it and agreed for it to be so. And it is done here and now in mind, and it must out picture into form. And so it does, and so it is. Thank you.